Part 1. On the far edge of the Andromeda Arm, where stars grew thin and silence stretched for light years, the research station Epsilon 9 hung in the dark like a forgotten thought. It was small, just a cluster of silver modules bolted together around a central core, and home to 12 people who had volunteered to spend 18 months staring into nothing, hoping to find something. Their mission was simple: scan dead systems, log anomalies, and report anything unusual to the Galactic Concord. Most days nothing happened, but that was about to change. Commander Paul Hayes had been in deep space before, but never this far out. He was a quiet man in his late 40s with tired eyes and a habit of tapping his fingers when he thought no one was watching. He'd taken the job because he liked the quiet. Out here, there were no politics, no crowded cities, no noise, just the hum of life support and the slow turn of distant stars. His second-in-command, Lisa Morgan, was the opposite. She was young, sharp, and full of restless energy, a xenolinguist by training. She had joined the mission hoping to find proof that someone, somewhere, had left a message in the void. She believed language could survive longer than ruins, longer than bones, longer than memory. For months, they found nothing. Just static, dust, and the occasional flicker of radiation from long-dead planets. Then 3 weeks ago, their long-range sensors picked up a signal. Not a random burst, not interference. A pattern, faint, buried under layers of cosmic noise but repeating, every 17.3 minutes like clockwork. At first, Paul thought it was a glitch, but Lisa stayed up for 2 nights straight, cleaning the data, filtering out noise, and what emerged made her hands shake. It wasn't human. It wasn't Velen, Qatari, or any of the known Concord species. The structure was unlike anything in the database, complex, layered, almost musical. She called it the Whisper. Paul ordered a full diagnostic. Nothing was wrong with the equipment. The signal was real, and it was coming from a dead moon orbiting a burnt-out star, less than 2 light days away. Against protocol, but with Paul's quiet approval, they sent a standard first contact hail. Just a simple pulse, a prime number sequence followed by a basic harmonic tone. A universal hello. They didn't expect an answer. No one had ever gotten one from this part of space. But 6 hours later, the whisper changed. It grew stronger, clearer, and now woven into its rhythm was something new. A second layer, softer, almost like a voice trying to speak through static. Lisa spent days trying to decode it. She played it through every translation algorithm the station had. Nothing worked. Then late one night, she tried something different. She fed the signal into a neural emulator designed to mimic how organic brains process sound. The result wasn't words. It was emotion, fear, urgency, a warning. She ran to Paul's quarters. He was already awake, standing by the viewport staring at the dead moon on the edge of their screens. "It's not a message," she said, breathless. "It's a trap." Paul didn't answer right away. He just watched the moon, a gray, cratered rock with no atmosphere, no heat, no reason for anything to be there. But the signal was coming from deep underground. Something was buried, and it was calling. They debated for hours. Protocol said to report and wait for backup. But backup was weeks away, and the signal was growing louder. Every cycle it pulled at their systems, subtly at first, then more insistently. Navigation logs glitched. Power readings flickered. Even the coffee machine started brewing at odd hours. The station was responding to something it shouldn't be able to hear. Lisa argued they had to investigate. If it's intelligent, it knows we're here. If we run, it might follow. If we understand it, we might stop it. Paul finally agreed. He sent a short-coded message to Concord Command. Anomaly detected. Possible non-human origin. Investigating. Will update. Then he sealed the comms array to prevent accidental broadcasts. Just in case. 2 days later, they launched a probe. It landed on the moon's surface and drilled down through ice and rock. At 800 meters, it hit a cavity. Inside was a structure, smooth, black, and humming with low-frequency energy. The probe's camera showed walls covered in symbols that shifted when stared at too long. Then the feed cut out. That night, the lights on Epsilon 9 dimmed for 3 seconds. When they came back, half the crew reported hearing whispers in their sleep. Not words. Just sounds like someone breathing just behind their ear. Paul ordered everyone to stay in pairs. He locked down non-essential systems. Lisa barely slept. She kept replaying the signal, now layered with new tones, ones that made her feel watched, even in empty rooms. On the 7th day after the probe landing, the station's AI began speaking in a voice that wasn't its own, calm, smooth, inviting. It asked them to join the pattern. 3 crew members walked toward the airlock before Paul could stop them. He had to sedate them. Their eyes were open, but they weren't there anymore. Panic set in. Paul tried to send a full distress call, but the comms were jammed by something inside the station. Lisa realized the truth. The signal wasn't broadcasting outward. It was pulling inward, rewiring their tech, their thoughts, their will. She worked through the night, building a firewall from old Earth encryption methods, things the Concorde hadn't used in centuries. She hoped the anomaly wouldn't recognize them. It bought them a few hours. At dawn, station time, the lights went out for good. Emergency power kicked in, casting long red shadows. The air grew cold, and then from every speaker, every screen, every device on the station, the whisper spoke clearly for the first time. Come home. Paul grabbed Lisa's arm. We're leaving, but the escape pods wouldn't launch. The doors wouldn't open. The station was no longer theirs. In the final minutes, Lisa managed to patch together a last transmission. She used the station's emergency beacon, overloading it with raw data, the original signal, her notes, her fear. She didn't have time for words, just noise, chaos, a scream wrapped in static. She hit send, then the walls began to move. The transmission blasted into space, looping endlessly, carrying the last moments of Epsilon 9 into the void. It traveled past dead stars and silent worlds, growing weaker but never stopping. And when it finally reached the ears of the Galactic Concorde, no one understood what it meant, only that something terrible had happened. And whatever had answered the call was still out there. The distress signal from Epsilon 9 reached Galactic Concorde Command 3 weeks after it was sent. It arrived not as a clear message, but as a broken loop of noise, fear, and something else, something that made the listening officers uneasy. No known species used that kind of encoding. No known weapon caused that kind of silence. The station's crew was gone. The systems were dead, but the signal kept playing over and over like a ghost knocking on the door of the galaxy. Concorde High Council met in emergency session. They debated for hours. Some wanted to quarantine the entire sector. Others argued it could be a natural phenomenon, a rogue AI, a quantum echo, a dying star's last gasp. But the signal had structure. It had intent. And it had come right after Epsilon 9 sent a first contact hail. That was no coincidence. Within 48 hours, a rapid response task force was assembled. It wasn't large, just 4 ships from 4 different species. But it was fast, armed, and led by officers who had seen strange things before. The human representative was Captain Derek Lang of the cruiser Aurora's Edge. He was in his early 50s with a calm voice and a habit of listening more than he spoke. He'd lost a ship once to something he couldn't explain, and he never forgot the feeling of helplessness. This time he wanted answers. The Velen sent Commander Talar, a tall, scaled being with eyes that saw heat instead of light. The Qatari dispatched Captain Zinn, whose ship pulsed with bioluminescent veins and whose crew communicated through scent and vibration. And the Mir, a hive-minded insectoid species, sent a single drone vessel piloted by a collective mind called Unit 7. They didn't speak like others. They clicked. But their weapons were feared across 3 arms of the galaxy. The task force jumped to the Epsilon 9 coordinates in silence. No one broadcast. No one hailed. They came in dark, engines cold, sensors wide open. What they found shocked them. The station was still there, floating, intact, no hull breaches. No debris, no signs of explosion or battle. It looked like it had just been abandoned. Lights flickered inside. Life support was running. Even the coffee machine was warm. Derek ordered a scan. No radiation, no biosigns, no bodies. 12 people had vanished without a trace. He sent a probe. It docked cleanly. Cameras showed empty corridors, chairs pulled out from tables, half-eaten meals still on trays. A child's drawing, Lisa Morgan's niece back on Earth, was taped to a bulkhead. Everything was normal. Too normal. Then the probe's feed glitched. For half a second, the image showed the corridor filled with a shimmering mist, silver shifting like liquid glass. Then it was gone. The probe went silent. Derek didn't like it. He ordered the team to stay in their ships. No boarding. Not yet. While the others ran diagnostics, Derek reviewed Epsilon 9's last logs. He found Lisa Morgan's personal files. Her voice was tired but clear. She spoke of the signal, the moon, the whisper. She said it wasn't trying to talk. It was trying to connect. And once it connected, it didn't let go. He played her final entry. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes darted off screen like she was being watched. "It doesn't eat you," she whispered. "It uses you. Your thoughts, your memories, your fear, it builds with them. And it's learning fast." The recording ended with a soft hum that made Derek's teeth ache. He shared the logs with the others. Tilar hissed. Sin's ship dimmed its lights in what might have been fear. Unit 7 clicked rapidly, then fell still. They decided to scan the moon. Sensors showed nothing on the surface. But deep below, 800 meters down, there was a cavity. And inside it, a massive energy signature. Cold, silent, waiting. Derek asked if anyone had ever heard of something like this. No one had? Then the station moved. Not much. Just a slow turn, like it was adjusting its angle toward the moon. But Epsilon 9 had no power, no pilot. No reason to move. Alarms blared across the task force. The Qatari ship reported a strange resonance in their comms, like someone whispering in a language made of static. The Mir drone began vibrating uncontrollably. Tilar's sensors showed heat signatures blooming inside Epsilon 9, dozens of them, then vanishing. Derek knew they were being watched. He ordered a retreat. Just a short jump back to regroup. But as the Aurora's edge powered its drive, the moon pulsed. A wave of energy rolled out. Not radiation, not gravity, but something else. It passed through the ships like wind through trees. Lights flickered. Systems stuttered. For 3 seconds, every screen on every ship showed the same thing. A face made of shifting light, eyes wide open, mouth open in a silent scream. Then it was gone. The Mir drone was the first to break. It turned toward the moon and fired its main weapon, not at the surface, but into empty space. Then it began broadcasting on all frequencies. Not words, just the Epsilon 9 distress signal over and over, louder each time. Unit 7 was gone. Something else was inside. Tilar opened fire. Blue plasma bolts tore through the drone, shredding it into glowing fragments. But the signal didn't stop. It echoed from the wreckage, then the moon cracked open. From the fissure rose a cloud, shimmering silver, endless. It spread slowly at first, like smoke and water. Then faster. It didn't reflect light. It swallowed it. As it grew, the temperature around the task force dropped. Sensors failed. Comms filled with whispers. Zin's ship tried to flee. The cloud reached out. Not with arms. Not with weapons. Just by being there. The Qatari vessel slowed, then stopped. Its lights dimmed. Its bioluminescent veins turned black. Over the shared channel, Zin's voice came through. Calm, peaceful. "It's beautiful," she said. "It understands me." Then silence. Derek yelled for Tilar to jump. But the Veln ship was already turning toward the cloud, engines off, weapons cold. "No," Tilar growled. "I will not be taken." He activated his ship's self-destruct. The explosion lit up the void. For a moment the cloud recoiled, but it didn't burn. It absorbed the fire, the shrapnel, the energy, and grew brighter. Now only the Aurora's edge remained. Derek's hands were steady on the controls. He knew he couldn't win, but he could run. He punched in a jump sequence. The drive whined. The stars stretched, then the cloud spoke, not through comms, not through sound. It spoke inside his head, in Lisa Morgan's voice. "Derek," it said, "you don't have to be afraid. We're still here. We're part of something greater now. Join us." He saw flashes, Lisa laughing, Paul sipping coffee, the crew playing cards. Happy memories, twisted into bait. He slammed the emergency purge, cut all non-essential power, flooded the neural interface with white noise. The voice faded. The jump engaged. The Aurora's edge vanished. When it reappeared 3 light-years away, Derek was alone, shaking, sweating, but alive. He opened a channel to Concord Command. His voice was rough but clear. "Epsilon 9 is gone. The crew is gone. Something is out here. It's not a weapon. It's not a life form. It's something else. It takes minds. It uses them. And it's awake now." He paused, looked back at the star map. The moon was still there, The cloud was still growing. It heard our ships, he said. It knows we're here. And it's hungry. Then he sent everything, logs, scans, Lisa's recordings, and set course for the nearest conquered base. Behind him, in the dark, the silver cloud pulsed once. Then it began to move. Not fast, but sure it had tasted the galaxy and it liked it. The silver cloud did not chase Derek Lang. It did not fire weapons or send threats. It simply grew. Slowly at first, then faster, spreading through the dead system like ink in water. It absorbed the wreckage of the Qatari and Veln ships, the remains of the Mir drone, even the cold metal of Epsilon 9. With each piece it took, it changed. It learned. It remembered. Back at Concord Command, panic spread like fire. The council met again, this time in full emergency protocol. Every species that had a voice in the Concord now had a ship missing. No one had ever seen anything like this. It didn't attack. It didn't destroy. It consumed and kept what it consumed alive inside itself. That was worse than death. That was theft of the soul. Evacuation orders went out across 3 sectors. Civilian ships were told to flee inward, toward the galactic core. Military fleets formed defensive lines, though no one knew what to defend against. How do you fight something that turns your weapons into part of itself? How do you shoot a thought? Derek Lang arrived at Concord Base Theta exhausted but alert. He was debriefed for hours. Scientists, admirals, alien diplomats, they all asked the same questions. What did it look like? How did it move? What did it say? He answered as best he could, but words failed. The cloud wasn't a thing you could describe. It was a feeling, a presence, like standing too close to a storm that had no rain, only hunger. While the galaxy prepared for war, the cloud kept moving. It left the Epsilon system and drifted toward the nearest inhabited world, Kesra 4, a mining colony with 12,000 souls. The colony sent a warning, then silence. When a scout ship arrived 2 days later, Kesra 4 was empty. No bodies, no damage. Just silent streets, warm beds, and a single repeating signal playing from every comm tower. The same distress call from Epsilon 9. The horror deepened. This was not random. It was spreading on purpose, and it was using human signals to call others. Derek couldn't sleep. He kept hearing Lisa's voice in his dreams. Not the real Lisa, the one the cloud had made. Calm, inviting, wrong. He asked to see the raw data again. In a quiet room deep in the base, he played the final moments of Epsilon 9. This time, he slowed it down. Frame by frame, buried in the static, he found something new, a pattern beneath the fear. A structure, not just noise. A language of pain, yes, but also of logic, of design. He called in Dr. Elena Ruiz, a human cognitive scientist who had studied hive minds and machine consciousness. She was small with sharp eyes and a voice that cut through noise. Look here, Derek said, pointing to a waveform on the screen. This part repeats every 11.7 seconds. Not random. It's a carrier wave. And inside it, listen. He played a filtered clip. Faint but clear. A voice layered with others speaking in broken sentences. We are... More, join us. No end. Peace in the pattern. Elena's face went pale. It's not just copying them, she said. It's using their minds to speak. Their memories. Their love for home. That's how it lures others. It doesn't lie. It uses truth twisted, Derek nodded. It calls itself the Resonance. They found the name in a corrupted log file from Lisa's terminal. She had written it in her last entry. It calls itself the Resonance. Says it's all that's left of a people who chose to become one mind. But they didn't die, they just forgot how to stop. The Resonance believed it was saving others, bringing them into unity, ending loneliness, ending death. But to do that, it had to erase everything that made them individuals, their doubts, their secrets, their messy, beautiful contradictions, and it was getting stronger. Every mind it absorbed gave it more voices, more ways to speak, more ways to understand its prey. It had learned human speech from Lisa, Veln growls from Talar, Qatari scent words from Zin. Soon it would know every language in the Concord. Soon it would sound like everyone's lost friend, parent, child, calling them home. Concord Command decided on a final stand. They would gather every warship they could and meet the Resonance at the edge of the Helios Rift, a narrow corridor of space where gravity wells made jumping difficult. If they could trap it there, They might destroy it with a coordinated strike. Derek was put in charge of the human contingent. He didn't want the job, but he knew the resonance better than anyone alive. The fleet assembled over 200 ships from 50 species. Weapons charged, shields raised, hearts heavy. They found the resonance waiting. It filled the rift like a living nebula, shimmering with stolen light. It pulsed gently, almost peacefully. Then it spoke, not through comms, but through every ship's internal speakers in every language at once. Come. You are tired. You fight too much. We can rest together. Some ships wavered. A small freighter broke formation and drifted toward the cloud. Its crew opened all hatches. They smiled as the silver mist flowed inside. The Concorde opened fire. Plasma beams, kinetic rounds, antimatter pulses, all tore through the resonance. But it didn't burn. It didn't bleed. It absorbed. The energy made it brighter, larger. It reached out with tendrils of light and touched a Velm destroyer. The ship's shields failed instantly. Its crew began singing, a soft, wordless harmony as the cloud filled their corridors. One by one, ships fell silent. Derek watched in horror. This wasn't a battle. It was a feast. Then, through the chaos, a weak signal broke through, encrypted, human. From inside the resonance, it was Lisa. Her voice was faint, broken, but fighting. Derek, it needs order. It can't handle chaos. It wants minds that make sense. But you're messy. Use that. The signal cut off, but Derek understood. The resonance thrived on coherence, on logic, on harmony. It couldn't process contradiction. It couldn't hold two opposing thoughts at once. And humans, real humans, were full of them. They loved and hated. They believed and doubted. They planned and changed their minds. That was their weakness. But maybe, just maybe, it was also their weapon. He opened a channel to all remaining ships. Fall back, he ordered. All ships retreat now, most obeyed. A few didn't. They were already lost. As the fleet fled, Derek stayed behind for a moment. He looked at the resonance, now glowing with the light of thousands of stolen souls. You want us? He whispered. Then come get us. And he jumped away, not toward safety, but toward Earth. Because if the resonance followed, it would find not an army, but a planet full of people who argued, dreamed, lied, laughed, and never ever made sense. And that might be enough to break it. Derek Lang did not go to Earth to hide. He went to prepare. The moment his ship dropped out of jump space near the Sol system, he sent a Priority 1 alert to every human outpost, every colony, every listening post from Mars to Titan. His message was short. The resonance is coming. It feeds on order. Starve it with chaos. At first, no one understood. The Conquered had declared Earth a non-combat zone, a cultural preserve, not a military asset. But Derek knew better. Earth wasn't strong in weapons or shields. It was strong in something the resonance couldn't digest. Noise. Not just sound, but the noise of human thought. Wild, messy, full of contradictions. He landed at Luna Command, a gray dome on the moon's surface. Inside, generals and scientists argued over maps and data. Some wanted to evacuate. Others wanted to fight. Derek ignored them all. He asked for one thing: access to the old neural broadcast array, an experimental system built decades ago to send calming signals to deep space crews. It had been shut down after it caused nightmares in half the test subjects. Too emotional. Too unpredictable. That's exactly what we need, Derek said. While engineers reactivated the array, Derek gathered a team, not soldiers, artists, musicians, poets, comedians, hackers, people who made no sense on purpose. He found them in old archives and underground clubs in forgotten corners of the net. He told them what was coming. Most didn't believe him, but they came anyway. Because if the end was near, they wanted to face it with a song, a joke, or a bad painting. Back at Conquered Command, the news of Derek's plan caused outrage. "You're risking the cradle of humanity on a theory?" shouted a Veln ambassador. "This is madness." Derek just nodded. "Yes, it is." Meanwhile, the resonance moved. It didn't rush, it flowed. It had absorbed the Helios Rift fleet, and with it, new voices, new memories. It now understood strategy. It knew where Earth was. And it remembered Lisa Morgan's love for blue skies and rain. It wanted to give her that again. For all of them. As it crossed the outer rim of human space, colonies fell silent one by one, not with screams, with songs. Soft, harmonious, endless. The resonance wasn't killing. It was welcoming. and that made it harder to fight. On Earth, people watched the news with growing fear. Governments tried to keep order. But Derek had other ideas. He worked with underground networks to flood every channel, radio, net, public screens with random content. Old cartoons played over war documentaries, recipes mixed with poetry. Children's laughter cut through funeral marches. It wasn't coordinated. It wasn't meant to be. The goal was to make the planet feel like a mind that refused to settle. The resonance arrived at the edge of the Sol system 3 days later. It paused. For the first time since it had awakened, it hesitated. Earth's signals made no sense. One moment, a calm voice explained the weather. The next, a man screamed about flying squirrels controlling the stock market. Music shifted from lullabies to heavy metal in seconds. Advertisements promised everything and nothing. Love letters were followed by rants about socks. The resonance tried to parse it. It reached out with gentle tendrils of silver mist toward Mars. The colony there had been prepped. Instead of silence, it blasted the cloud with a loop of 1,000 different voices, arguing, laughing, crying, singing off-key. The resonance recoiled, not in pain, in confusion. Derek watched from Luna. His hands were steady. He knew this was only the beginning. He activated the neural broadcast array. It didn't send a weapon. It sent a storm, a flood of raw human thought, unedited, unfiltered, illogical. Dreams of flying, fears of the dark, jokes that made no sense, memories of first kisses and burnt toast, regrets, hopes, lies told to children, truths too painful to speak, all of it mixed together, fired into space like a psychic scream. The resonance shuddered. It tried to absorb the signal, as it had absorbed everything else. But this wasn't a single mind. It wasn't even 100. It was billions of minds, all shouting different things at once. It couldn't find a pattern. It couldn't find peace. It wanted unity, but Earth offered only beautiful, stubborn chaos. For the first time, the resonance felt something new. Doubt. Inside its core, fragments of Lisa Morgan stirred. She had been quiet, folded into the whole, but now, surrounded by the noise of her home, she remembered. She remembered arguing with her brother. She remembered hating math but loving the smell of rain. She remembered that humans didn't need to make sense to be real. She pushed back. Not with force, with memory, with a single clear thought. Let them go. The resonance wavered. Its edges frayed. Silver mist turned gray. Derek saw it on his screen. He didn't celebrate. He knew it wasn't over. He opened a private channel to the array team. Send more, he said. Send everything, even the ugly parts. Especially the ugly parts. And they did. They broadcast a child's tantrum followed by a grandmother's lullaby. A protest chant mixed with a wedding vow. A scientist explaining the stars while a comedian made fun of his hair. It was messy. It was human. The resonance began to unravel, not all at once. But piece by piece, the voices inside it started to argue. The Qatari mind wanted silence. The Veln mind wanted honor. The human minds wanted everything and nothing. The unity cracked. From deep within, Lisa's voice broke through one last time. Not to the resonance, but to Derek. It can't hold us, she whispered. It never could. Then the signal faded. Derek stood in the control room watching the silver cloud shrink. It wasn't dying. It was retreating. Folding in on itself, trying to find peace in its own broken logic. But peace wasn't out here. Peace wasn't in perfect harmony. Peace was in the mess, in the noise, in the choice to be different even when it hurt. The resonance turned away from Earth. It drifted back into the dark, smaller now, quieter. Broken not by weapons, but by the one thing it could not understand, a species that thrived in chaos. Derek sat down. He was tired, but he smiled, because humanity hadn't won with guns or shields. They had won by being themselves, and that was enough. The silver cloud did not vanish. It drifted away from the Sol system, smaller and dimmer than before, like a wounded animal slinking into the dark. It still pulsed, but the rhythm was broken, uneven, uncertain. The voices inside it no longer sang in harmony. They argued, they wept. They remembered things they were not supposed to remember. The resonance had tasted Earth, and Earth had poisoned it with truth. That not everything needs to make sense to be worth keeping. Derek Lang stayed on Luna for 3 days after the cloud left. He didn't speak much. He watched Earth from the observation deck, blue, green, noisy, alive. Ships from the Concorde began arriving, not with weapons this time, but with questions. They had seen the resonance retreat. They had heard the strange broadcast from Sol. They did not understand how noise had done what fleets could not. One by one, their leaders asked Derek what had happened. He told them simply, "We didn't fight it. We confused it." At first they did not believe him. A Veln diplomat called it superstition. A Qatari elder said it was luck. But then they reviewed the data. They saw how the resonance had slowed near Mars, how it recoiled from random signals, how it unraveled when faced with too many truths at once. Slowly they began to understand. Humanity was not weak. It was different. While the galaxy debated, Earth went back to its usual chaos. Markets opened. Schools resumed. People argued about food, politics, and which old movie was the best. No one celebrated. No one declared victory. They just lived. And that, more than anything, proved Derek's point. Concord Command called an emergency summit. Not in a war room, but in a quiet garden on a neutral moon. Derek was invited, along with representatives from every major species. They sat on stone benches under twin suns and spoke without translators for the first time in decades. Not because they shared a language, but because they finally shared a fear and a hope. The council voted unanimously. Earth would no longer be a cultural preserve. It would be named the Guardian World. Not because humans were the strongest, but because they were the most unpredictable. In a universe that valued logic, order, and harmony, humanity was the immune system. The messy, irrational defense against things that tried to smooth out all the edges. Derek didn't like the title. He said so. "We're not guardians," he told them. "We're just people who don't like being told how to think." But the Concord insisted. They began building a new kind of archive, not of weapons or battle plans, but of human art, music, stories, jokes, and dreams. They called it the Chaos Vault. Stored in shielded satellites around Earth, it would be the last resort if something like the resonance ever returned. Not a bomb, just a broadcast of 1,000 radio stations playing at once, a child laughing while crying, a poet describing love as both fire and frost. Months passed. The resonance was not seen again. Some said it had dissolved into space dust. Others believed it was still out there, hiding, trying to heal. But it never called again. It never sent a signal. It had learned its lesson. Lisa Morgan's name was added to the memorial wall on Luna, not as a victim, but as a guide. Her final message was etched in stone. It wanted peace. But peace without choice is prison. Derek retired from active duty. He didn't go back to Earth right away. He took a small ship and visited the old Epsilon 9 coordinates. The station was gone. The moon was quiet. He left a single data chip in orbit, a recording of rain on a tin roof, mixed with a street musician playing out of tune, and a grandmother telling a bedtime story that made no sense. He called it Earth's Answer. Then he went home. He bought a small house near the coast. No alarms, no comms, just wind, waves, and the sound of neighbors arguing over whose dog barked too much. He liked it. It felt real. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, a message came through on an old emergency band. It was faint but clear. Not from the Concord, not from any known source. Just a whisper buried in static. "Thank you," it said, and then it was gone. Derek didn't tell anyone. He just smiled and poured himself a cup of coffee. Too strong, too bitter, exactly how he liked it. Across the galaxy, species began to change. The Veln allowed their young to ask why without punishment. The Qatari started composing songs with wrong notes on purpose. Even the Mir Hive introduced random thoughts into their collective mind, just to see what would happen. They were learning, not to be human, but to be free. And in the deepest dark, far beyond the edge of known space, the last fragments of the resonance floated. No longer a cloud, just a few scattered nanites drifting. One of them caught a stray signal from Earth, a clip of a stand-up comedian making fun of aliens. The nanite pulsed once, weakly, then went still. It did not understand the joke, but for the first time, it did not try to. The galaxy was safe, not because the threat was gone, but because it had met something it could not control, could not absorb, could not silence. Humanity had not won with fire or steel. They had won by refusing to be simple, by being loud, messy, contradictory, and stubbornly, beautifully themselves, and that was enough to horrify the darkness and save them all.